First, and I'd like to call this special meeting of the Oak Harbor City Council to order at this time. And as I mentioned, special meeting, so we will have an action item coming up in a few minutes. But before we begin today, I want to share with heavy heart that we were notified this morning that a member of our city staff has passed away. We grieve the loss of our coworker, our friend, and valued member of our city family. Our staff and council have been notified. We ask that you recognize and have grace for the impact on our staff. Flags at city facilities are at half staff. Our deepest condolences to our colleagues, family, and loved ones. Any further information will be shared by the family as they see fit, and we respect their privacy in this difficult time. I invite you to join me in a moment of silence at this time in their honor. Thank you. Today's meeting will be both a physical meeting location and a virtual meeting. Members of our city staff are participating via teleconference. Some are. Certainly we have some staff here with us today. Today's meeting may be viewed live via YouTube and on cable channel 10 HD 1090. Since we have an action item on today's agenda, I will ask our city clerk, Julie Lindsay, to call the roll at this time. Julie?
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor Pro Tem Munns.
Present.
Councilmember Heisen.
Present.
Councilmember Wiesner.
Present.
Councilmember Stuckey.
Present.
Councilmember Hoffmeyer.
Present.
Councilmember Evans.
Present.
Councilmember Marshall.
Present.
Mayor, all members of council are present.
Thank you very much. Councilor Heisen is with us virtually, so we will move to our action item at this time, which is public safety level fire service levy. And today we have Fire Chief Ray Merrill with us, and our Finance Director, David Goldman, will also be involved in the presentation, and I believe he's with us virtually, and then along with input from Communications and IT Manager Sabrina Combs and City Administrator Blaine Oborn. So at this point, I think I'm going to turn to Chief Merrill to start, and then I will confirm with our clerk about any possible public comment after that. So, Chief Merrill?
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon, Council and Mayor. Ray Merrill, Fire Chief. It's a pleasure to be here today. This is the furthest we've ever gotten in this discussion, so I'm really looking forward to discussing this with you and getting your feedback and to see where we're going to go. I've got a short presentation. We've talked about a lot of this stuff over the last couple years, and we can either wait till the end to ask questions, or if you want to just pepper me with them as we're going through the presentation, I'm good either way. So looking back 16 years, we knew back in 2006 that we did a strategic plan, and part of that plan said that we needed a fire station at some point in the southwest area, that the growth was going to go that direction after that strategic plan. The intent was to eventually look to build a fire station in that area, just knowing the growth that was going to occur, and that since 2006 we've annexed 216 more acres of land that the fire department protects. In 2016, we did a feasibility study, as some of you may remember, and part of that was a response analysis. We found that 24% of our homes We're outside of our response area within the 4-minute or 1.5-mile radius that's established by Washington Survey and Rating Bureau and by NFPA, National Fire Protection Association Standard 1710 for professional fire departments. And that's all part of the ISO rating. And we knew that the largest gap that we had is in the south and southwest quadrant. And we have seen since 2016 the growth that has occurred in that area and the growth that is projected to occur in that area. We also know that we needed to improve our response times at some point because we don't meet the minimum standards either set by NFPA or by the City Council at 5 minutes for fires and 4 minutes for medical calls. That we are slowly, as you've seen over the annual reports, we're declining from that response time analysis that's been created. And one of the recommendations was, again, to put a fire station in that southwest quadrant. The ideal location was at the corner of Swantown Road and Heller, but there is no property there, but we have looked at other areas within that locale to see if we can find some property. And the intent is to put a station there, a satellite station, in order to provide coverage to that area that would augment the coverage that we have out of our current fire station. And we've talked about this before, that we're going to look at a smaller station. It's going to be staffed 24/7 with both career staff and some paid on-call staff. I'm going to talk a little bit later on about staffing, and that was a couple of comments that we saw in the survey that came back. We want to look at increasing that staffing level. We know that we are considerably behind our comparable cities, as I've talked about in some other reports, where we have a 0.65 firefighter per 1,000 population, and our comparables have 1.25 per 1,000. So we're way behind the curve when we need to look at staffing and staffing levels. And as I've mentioned before, you know, there are times in this city that we only have a 3-person crew on. This morning, we had 4 calls simultaneously, and we were sending 1 person to a call. We were calling mutual aid from NAS and from North Whidbey Fire as well. So it does happen. We also have to look at replacing some of our older apparatus. 2 of our engines are 24 years old. We know that eventually those are going to have to be replaced. We know they're expensive. There's no doubt about that. We know our ladder truck is 30 years old. We did refurbish it to get another 7 to 10 years out of it. I think we're going to push those 10 years. But we have to look at where we're going to move forward to. And then we have to get some protective gear, some equipment for our firefighters, some of the new standards that are coming up as far as outfitting our firefighters and the equipment that we have. Realize that some of our equipment that we utilize today is 25 to 35 years old. It's well past its lifetime and it's time to replace it. But that's just, you know, stuff that's happened over the years. That's where some of this funding is going to, in order to staff that station, to build the station, to staff the apparatus, and to bring our gear up to the current standards that we need to have. So this is an artist, well, actually the architect's conceptual drawing of what our station would look like. As you know, back in 2016, we did the feasibility study, and with that, we came up with some projected ideas. This is what the station would potentially look like. About 7,000 square feet, 7,200 square feet, 3 bays in it, 6 sleeping rooms, a small kitchen, dining area, a small conference room, a large apparatus bay, and we have to do some stuff to meet new standards. We have to have a decontamination room inside of the building. We have to have extractor machines. We have to have a special area to dry our bunker gear. We have to be able to take our bunker gear and put it in an area so that it doesn't get carcinogens on it. We have to have an exhaust system built into the station. There's all these new standards that have been coming up in the last 10 to 15 years that we need to meet in order to build a station. But you know, I think it's a good-looking building. But this is what we came up with in 2016 and 2017. And I believe most of you have probably seen the intent of the floor plan that we came up with. It's been shown a couple times. We also have talked about getting a quint to staff that station, and the intent of the quint is so that we have a ladder, we have a pump, we have a tank, and we have all medical equipment all on one vehicle. We get credit from Survey and Rating Bureau for the second ladder truck. As you know, as I've spoken before, because we have a ladder truck and we don't have a reserve ladder truck, then we get deficiencies points against us. By having the quint allows us to move away from those deficiency points. This vehicle would be designed to carry 2, 4, or 6 firefighters, and it's a multifunctional vehicle, and the intent is to put it out in that southwest quadrant, so it does have a ladder on it for rescue, and it does have a pump. It does have a tank of water. It's got hose, so it can do a multitude of functions. And I've said this before, I think that's a pretty good look set of apparatus sitting there. As you know, we've done a lot of community outreach. We did the Holland Happen Festival. We manned a booth with the city for 2 days down there. We did an open house at the station, both on April 30th and May 12th. It was very well received. Had a lot of folks come through and visit. We spent probably 4 hours one day and almost 4.5 hours on another day just welcoming guests to come in and see what we have. And people were surprised when they looked at the equipment that we had, and we got a lot of comments and compliments about how good our apparatus and our equipment looked. So, kudos to our folks for taking care of the stuff that we purchase. As you know, we've done some social media posts. We've had stuff on the electronic sign. There's been stuff in the newspaper for articles. We've had printed material with the QR codes that people can go on and take surveys, the city's website, and then we did the public comments option after the feedback form closed. And you've had a chance, I hope, to take a look at what some of those comments were and what the replies were coming back from the Survey Monkey to give you an idea of a little bit how the citizens felt. So part of that is we put out the tell us what you think. We put in what the levies would increase and what it would pay for, and then the service on North Whidbey, to give you an idea, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit because that was one of the major comments that came up when you read the comment section about interactions with North Whidbey. I've got some maps up on your dais to take a look at just as comparables, but you can give an idea of how many followers we have and what our outreach was like during April 1st to May 26th, and what kind of replies and responses we got, and then people filling out the survey. Is the survey perfect? Absolutely not. Is it scientific? Absolutely not. Does it give you a pretty good pulse of what the citizens think? I would like to hope so. But with 147 replies, there were some duplicates in there. We found those. But we'll talk more about that a little bit later on if you have any questions. So we know that we got an 82% positive feedback on the support of the fire station. I thought that was a good number. I would like to see some more replies to our survey to get us a better feel. But I think if you looked at it statistically and you took those numbers and you moved them forward, I would hope to think that that support would remain pretty constant as you move forward in the process. Finance was the top reason that it wasn't supported. People said they could not afford what the levy and the bond was potentially going to cost. And I think David's going to speak to that a little bit later on. But we know it's going to cost money. I mean, there's just no doubt about it. But again, we have not gone to the public in 30 years asking for any money to build anything or to move forward. And I sympathize with the folks where it says that the cost of this is too much for me to handle. I can't afford it. And I thoroughly understand that. So some of our comments, one of them was, why not combine Oak Harbor Fire and North Whidbey Fire? We've talked about combining the two. In order to do that, we would have to create what's called a regional fire authority. And in order to do that, it'd have to be a vote of both North Whidbey's populace as well as the city of Oak Harbor's populace to merge those two agencies together to create one fire department. There's pros and cons. You can look at some places where they've done regional fire authorities and it has failed drastically, where they, at the end of the 5th year, all the entities wanted to get out of regional fire authorities. There's other fire authorities that have worked very well together. How ours would work, I couldn't tell you. I don't know for sure. But my biggest concern, I wouldn't want to do anything that would degrade the services that goes to the citizens of Oak Harbor. To me, this comes first. So it may be something to consider long range from now, but I don't think we're at the point today to combine those services together. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't utilize North Whidbey and they utilize us for mutual aid events and for auto aid areas. As I've talked, I think, with just about every one of you at some point, We do have an auto aid area designed with North Whidbey all the way around the city limits, where their station may be closer than ours, or we are closer than theirs. But if you take a look at the map that I laid out for you, to give you an idea, Station 26 down on Zylstra Road, that one is a non-staff station. It's a brick building with a fire engine parked inside of it. And when you take a look at that, from Howard's Point to Station 26 is 2.7 miles. Just from Zylstra Road Station to the far reaches of the city, and then you consider if it comes all the way down into Swantown, we add another 2.4 miles on top of that. So it doesn't gain us anything by utilizing that non-staff station. And if we were to depend on that station to respond, we're looking at anywhere from an 8 to a 15-minute response time just to come to the city limits, because again, it's an all-volunteer department there. You'd have to get their staff to come in to man the station and then respond. The city is surrounded on all sides by North Whidbey. I assume they're mutual aid agreements. We need more to justify this. Yes, there are mutual aid agreements between us and North Whidbey, us and Central Whidbey, us and the Navy base. So the mutual aid agreements do exist. When we consider mutual aid, it is not a guarantee that we're going to get somebody. It's merely a case of we're asking, can you send us apparatus? If North Whidbey was on a major structure fire and we had a structure fire, they may say, I'm sorry, but we can't come to you. We're too busy. We can't do it. So it's not a guarantee, even though you have a mutual aid agreement. It is an at-will agreement that says, if we can provide service, we will provide service. And it goes both ways, us to North Whidbey to us. And then and it says, I do support overall, but genuine question, additional staff and truck gear replacement upgrades alone suffice versus having another fire station. As I've spoken before, even though we put more staffing in our station that we have today, does not reduce the response time to their outer reaches. We've got to get apparatus and equipment out to those outer reaches and not just depend on our Station 81 to supply it. Also on your map, you can see where Station 25 is located. That may be staffed with 1 or 2 people, depending on their staffing levels during the day. And Station 27 down on Monroe Landing, again, which is about 2.7 miles away, is a non-staff station. So it's not a 100% reliable resource that we can just say, well, we'll just call North Whidbey to come and assist us. Same way with the Navy base. They may be busy on other calls. They may be busy out at the airfield, and again, not be able to provide that service to us. With all the residential housing scheduled to be built across the street from Safeway and Walmart, and where Waldron Construction is scheduled to build, the station needs to be built ASAP. Congestion in that stretch of Highway 20 is going to get bad. Pretty true statement. And I've mentioned once before, one Monday night while we were at a drill, we had a structure fire on Waterside Court, and it took us 8.18 minutes to get from our station to Waterside Court for garage fire because traffic was busy. And that was when we were fully staffed on a drill night. Imagine if it would have just been a 3-person crew to get an engine company out and then having to call the rest of our staff back in order to get the second and third vehicles out the door. So those are things that we take into consideration on how much staffing do we have, how quickly can we get there, and what happens on subsequent alarms. Andy spoke very highly of what we've done over the years as far as we've always spent our money wisely and frugally and maybe expect to continue those practices. And then there's a long statement here where the individual supports both a second station and additional staffing. One of the concerns they had was that we did not provide a staffing plan and that we were going to rely too heavily on paid on call. And to answer the staffing plan, our staff has looked at probably 9 or 10 different potential staffing plans. And it's really hard to say which one's going to work. Because if we go to the levy and it's turned down, then the staffing plan doesn't matter. If we ask for 4 firefighters, 6 firefighters, or 9 firefighters, depending on your all which direction you want to travel would definitely change our staffing plans. We have to look at the number of people that we have and how we're going to utilize those folks. Do we go to 24-hour shifts? Do we stay on the 12-hour shifts? We know that our paid on-call provide us a valuable function, and I've said before that they do have a tendency to move on, which is just typical because some of those folks are looking for a full-time job, and we are a good training ground for that. I mean, that's just a given. That's pretty well known nationwide for most agencies like ours. But we've been very fortunate with our paid on-call staff for the amount of work and the amount of staffing that we get out of those folks on a daily basis. So we're very fortunate, and I will say this again, that having paid on-call has helped keep the city in the black over the years when we consider staffing of the station. So, and this gentleman, or this person, just continues, it's not that he doesn't support the levy, he wants to support it, but his concern, again, is staffing. Once we know the levy is going to pass or has passed, and we know what our staffing levels are, then we're really going to sit down and determine what our staffing levels are going to be and how we're going to maintain that staffing level. But it's kind of futile to go in today and say, well, this is what we're going to do, because we just don't know. David, you want to jump in here now?
Yep,
Okay.
sure thing. All right, thank you, Ray. Great presentation so far. So this is a slide on the costs of the potential levy. So you can see in the upper left-hand corner, the Oak Harbor assessed valuation is about $2.5 billion. And what that does is it translates into the numbers that you see below. So our maximum statutory limit is 3.2. Normally for cities, it's 3.6, but because we're in the library district, they take a chunk out. So the maximum would be 3.2085. Our current levy for 2022, based on the latest numbers that came out from Island County, is 1.82303. That's the levy rate, and the amount of funding is $4.6 million. That translates into a little over $600 a year for the average property in Oak Harbor. That leaves a balance of 3.5, or unused levy of 3.5 million, or 1.38545. So the middle chart is the projected levy lid lift. This is a 50% plus one vote to pass. You have the staffing, equipment, and ops on the top. That's about 1.1 million. That includes the 2 lieutenants and the 2 firefighters and 4 paid-on-call shifts. That translates into a levy of 0.43429, and that would cost the average property about $144 a year, or about $12 a month. Adding 2 additional firefighters is a little under $200,000, and that's about $25 a year. And adding 3 additional firefighters is a little over $300,000, and that is about $42 a year. And then you have the replacement engine in there. That would be amortizing the cost of the replacement engine over a number of years, I think about 8 years. That's about $10 a year, or $74,000 per year. So the total levy lid lift would be about $1.681 million. That's how much it would raise. It would be 0.66559 onto the current levy, and that would impact the average property by $220 a year, or a little bit over $18 a month. Now for the excess levy portion, and this excess levy relates to the debt that would be needed to build the station, and also the loan that we would take out for the Quint apparatus that Ray had talked about earlier. The excess levies require a 60% plus 1 vote to pass. In total, with those 2 items, the total amount per year is around $700,000. And annually, it would be around $93 per year, or about a little bit under $8 a month. Now, once those debts are paid off for the Quint, this would drop down, and once the bond for the station is paid off over 20 years, that would also drop off. So the excess levies are only there as long as the debt still exists. Next slide. So with the levy lid lift and with the 20-year excess levy, the total amount that would be raised by the property taxes would be just under $7 million a year. The levy rate would be 2.77. And annually, the cost to the average homeowner is currently $605 a year. That would go up to $918 a year. So the difference you can see in the bottom chart, the difference there is $313 per year to the average property, or about $26 per month for those items that we had discussed earlier in the presentation.
Questions on this?
So
before-
next, yeah, any questions on this slide or the last two slides?
Yes, Councilor Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Goldman, the 1838 a month, is that, it's 210 for 2 or 348 for 3? Is that one or the other, or would we pay both of those?
Oh, can we go back one slide? Yeah, that would be each one. So what do you call it? You're talking about the 2 firefighters
That's correct.
and the 3 firefighters?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that would be, for 2 firefighters, it's $25.22 a year, and for 3, it's about $42 a year. Together, if you wanted, if we wanted to do 5, that would be, you'd have to combine those numbers. So it would be 4 plus 2, it would be like $67 a year.
So in to match the way the chief explained it, the base has 4 in it, then there's the option of 6 and the option of 9. So what we're doing.
Well, the base has 4, 2 lieutenants and 2 firefighters,
Yes.
but also 4 paid-on-call shifts.
Yeah, okay. So basically the options are 4, 6, or 9. Is that right, chief?
Correct.
Yeah.
But that 1838 is a total of all of those numbers, the 2 and the 3, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, everything, yep.
So that would then be how many? 9? If we had the 1838, the 4 plus 5?
Yes, it would be 9.
Yeah, you'd have 9.
Okay, thank you.
And this is what I was talking about. This would play a role in what our staffing model would look like. If you say we're only going to go with the staffing, the equipment, the ops for $11.99, and we take those 5 positions out, that would definitely change our staffing model. If those 5 positions stay in there, that changes it as well. That's why we haven't really been able to determine a really tight staffing model until we know which direction we're going to go.
Oh, I should also add that with the 2 additional firefighters, we actually took one of the paid-on-call shifts out. So that dollar amount for 192 actually is reduced by a certain amount because we took one of the paid-on-call shifts out. And also the amount that you see for the 3 additional firefighters also has one of the paid-on-call shifts out. So for the entire package, what would end up happening is you'd have 9 full-time positions, but you'd only have 2 paid-on-call firefighter shifts. Because part of the justification with the staffing plan that Ray was talking about was adding the full-time positions would alleviate the necessity to utilize the paid-on-call firefighter staff.
Yeah, and I know the chief does a great job, but I don't know that he can necessarily double the paid-on-call even if he has the money available. So that's why we looked at other options. I mean, certainly it's cheaper to have the paid-on-call, and it's a great program. But I don't know that it's sustainable. So the sustainable is having more full-time is sustainable, but then the other hand, it costs more.
Councilor Evans.
Thank you. Could we go to the next slide? So what's the cost of this money? What interest rate are we paying? How expensive is borrowing?
Well, it depends on the timing. Right now, if we were to do it, we could probably get around 4%, maybe a little bit less, but I'm not sure what the interest rates are going to be early next year. What would happen is if the voters approve this in November, it would, there'd be a few months before the money started rolling in. But we're working with our bond counsel and our financial advisor right now to put a plan in place so that if it does get approved by the voters, we can kind of hit the ground running and start moving right away. Your guess is as good as mine as to what the interest rates will be, in 6 months from now.
That is true, because a couple percent changes the payment drastically, and kind of changes.
Oh, I can tell you. I tell you, back in January, if you would have told me a mortgage rate would be over 5% today, I wouldn't have believed you.
Well, here it is. On this page, it says the total $2,174,000, and underneath that it says $2,327,000 by third year. Can you explain that?
All right, yeah. What we did is we took a 6-year average. So we took the cost in the model. There's like a model that runs behind the scenes on an Excel spreadsheet. And we looked at the first 6 years of costs, and we took the average of those 6 years to come up with these numbers. So that difference you see is really the average of those 6 years. It says by the third year, but it's really, that's about the middle of the 6 years. So it's really between third and fourth year, but yeah.
Thank you.
And something I'd like to add, and David and I have just spoken about this briefly. I recently got some information from a vendor that was talking about some different programs that the state has available that David and I are going to look into more on purchasing apparatus through a state fund with a little bit better interest rate. So that's something we are looking at.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And the cost of the fire station at 585, I mean, are we going to be able to do that?
We did an assessment back in 2016 of what the cost was going to look like, and I think I presented this to you once before, and we showed about a $1.2 million increase over what we originally planned. We were looking at 2.9 back in 2016, and this time when we went back and did the new cost analysis, we came in at 4.2 million. And when they took that amount, we went back to our architect that did the drawings, and he said, "I hope you're sitting down." And I said, "Well, I am." And I said, "Do I need to sit down further so I don't fall off my chair?" And he said, "You might." And he told me the cost and the breakdowns and everything else. I talked to him a couple days, a week and a half ago now. Gosh, time goes so quick. He said, "Have you seen how much wood has gone down in the last 2 months?" And I said, "I have. We know that OSB a few months ago was $82 a sheet. I saw it at Home Depot this last weekend for $27 a sheet." And he says, that's what we need to watch is the fluctuation in price. And that's going to make a big difference in the cost of your building. So flip a coin, Mr. Evans, and see which way we go.
Right.
And also keep in mind at the retreat, we did talk a little bit about the cost of the fire station. And based on the discussion, we brought it to $8 million. That includes taxes and the interior build out and all the engineering and everything else that goes with it. We're really hoping that it comes in lower than that, so we have to borrow less. But we just wanted to make sure we had enough built in there in case of any surprise fluctuations that might occur.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think with the levy, David, we have an authorization up to a cap amount, but if we come in less, then we levy less, right?
Yeah, with the excess levy will match exactly what the debt service is. That's the beauty of the excess levy. You're not going to get shorted, but you're not going to get too much. You're going to get exactly every year what you need to pay off that debt. Of course, the unbeautiful thing about the excess levy, it requires 60%, but that's another story.
Yeah, I wanted to announce that Mayor Pro Tem did talk to me about her sunglasses and the fact that she's had some work done on her eyes, dilation and so forth, so in case you're wondering. So anyway, yes, you bet. Well, she's cool, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You were at the optometrist today.
Any other questions at this point?
On this point?
Okay, back to you.
Okay. So we were asked once before to come up with some proposed ballot language, and Mr. Goldman and Ms. Evans worked together to come up with what our proposed ballot language would look like. So David, you want to take this one?
Sure. So I was reading through the RCW and the MRC manual, and there's a 75-word limit as to what you can put in there to describe what you're asking for from the voters. But that's not every word. There are some portions of this that are not included with the 75 words. So I went over it with our city attorney just to kind of figure out like what are the exact 75 words we can use. And this is what we came up with. This is, of course, subject to change and input and comments, but I ran this past Ray, and we thought this might make the most sense to go with, but if there's anything you'd like to remove or add, we just can't really add without taking anything out because of the word limitation, but, just I guess, take a look, tell us what you think, and we'll just adjust it as you see fit.
So I'll give you a minute if you want to read it over.
So, and David, this is based upon the staffing of 9 for the levy?
Yeah, this would be the full package. Yeah. I mean, obviously the numbers will change depending on the input and feedback we get today, but staffing at 9 and the 8 million for the station and 1.2 million for the Quint. That's that 9.2 million you see on the right-hand side.
Counselor Heisen has her hand up. Counselor Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm wondering if anytime I'm asked something like this on a ballot, my immediate question is, how much is this going to cost me? Like, in terms of per month or per year, just so I can, because when someone says, point blah, 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 on per $1,000, I'm not going to bust up my calculator and look at my assessed value and do all those things. I just kind of want to know, what is this realistically going to cost me? And so I'm wondering, if it would behoove us to put an example, like for example, if your house is worth $400,000, it will cost you an extra $18 a year, whatever. I don't remember the exact numbers from the previous slide. Do we think that would be helpful for readers, or do we think that would be off-putting for readers? Because I realize not everybody, looks at things the same way. I'd be interested to hear what my peers have to say.
Just real quick, sorry to interject. Because of that 75 word limit, what I've seen other cities do is provide information to the public on their website or through flyers or meetings and so on, that shows them exactly how much, the average house would have to pay in order to, if this was to be approved by the voters. Because of that word limitation, it's really tough to get a lot of those examples in the actual levy language, but because there are some requirements that we have to keep in there, like this amount on the left, you see how it says 0.6656 per thousand, and all the other weird numbers, that's a requirement. And on the right, the 9.2 million is a requirement and stuff too. But anyway, just sorry to.
Yeah, David Goldman.
No, that's helpful. It's, plus, if we throw in too many numbers, that could just serve to be more confusing than it is illuminating. And I know that the information can be found in our informational materials. I'm just trying to think of how to make this as accessible as possible for the voter. So, no, I very much appreciate your input. Thank you, Dave.
Thank you, Counselor Heisen. I'll turn to Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you, Mayor. Before we get the ballot, usually we get a voter's pamphlet, because we're going to have candidates and there's going to be other issues. The state legislature wants us to vote on this. Aren't we allowed to put in information on why this is on the ballot? I know it also has a requirement of not over so many words, but it would be worded different to explain over what we have as the ballot language. So why can't we do that?
We could. And you're talking to the voters pamphlet with the...
Yes, we could. Yeah, that's what I've seen too in the voters pamphlet that comes out about a month before. I've seen that too, where it would explain exactly what Tara was talking about. The council member Heisen was talking about.
No, and I think a lot of people keep that pamphlet so when they get their ballot, they can go side by side. Now, sometimes the voter pamphlet has Greek written in it, and you're not sure what they're saying. But I think we can come up with very good, simple language that would explain it, to be sure that we have something in it. And I believe that is a different due date than the ballot language, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, we'll be sure to watch that due date. So, and I know we were successful in doing that when we did the transportation benefit sales tax. We did the education component. We had our own stuff, and we had the stuff in the information in the voter pamphlet. And our city attorney, I don't know if she wants to, Hillary's here. She may want to speak to these questions that are transpired.
No, that's all accurate.
Okay, I just think these are straightforward. They're as plain as we can get it. You can't put everything in there, But we must take advantage of the voter's pamphlet in putting in the why, or as Ms. Heisen was saying, what's it going to cost me? And I think we would be able to whittle it down, and as long as it's plain English, I mean, it should go, but we can't miss that deadline. And I believe they're different, and voter pamphlet is before the ballot. You apply to be on the ballot, and then what you put on, I think, is a different timeline than the voter pamphlet, if I'm not mistaken. But, yeah, good work, staff. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's going to be some of our, some of our advertising. We're going to put that information out.
Education.
Education. There we
We
go.
don't advertise.
Good word. Good word. So the intent is to put each of these on as a standalone ballot measure.
Actually, I think Mr. Hoffmeyer, Councilor Hoffmeyer had his hand up next.
All I had was, based off of what Councilor Heisen was saying, good points. At this point, it would already be echoing every word that Mayor Pro Tem said. Thank you.
Councilor Stuckey.
Do we, looking at the levy lid lift where it talks about operating costs for a second fire station, do we pigeonhole ourselves at all if that goes through but the other doesn't? Here we are saying we're going to staff a second fire station and then we don't pass the second fire station. Do we get into any trouble with that?
Do we get, no. All that it was going to end up doing is putting more staff in our current station, but it'd be great to have the additional staff, but it doesn't change the dynamics of how far it still takes to travel. So ideally, we would want both. We would hate to see one pass and not the other. I think it's very important that they both pass simultaneously.
But we don't get any trouble by saying we're going to staff a second fire station and the other fire station doesn't happen. We don't get any trouble by having that in there.
Correct.
Okay.
Well,
Well, let's
we
ask
might
Dave.
want to, we may want to get rid of the word seconds. Maybe make it more generic if that was to happen. That's what I'm thinking. And if the levy passes, but the excess levy doesn't pass, I don't know if council would want to have the option to maybe just build up the money and do a pay-go and build a second station in like 3 or 4 years using just the levy lift. If the council's desirous of that, it might behoove us to kind of look at the language a little closer and do some tweaking of the words.
I just like the
That would-
idea
that
of some
would-
flexibility if
the
we get
count-
into I don't anticipate them. I think if both will pass or both won't. And let's be honest, it looks like both will. But I like the idea of the flexibility of someone not doing something later, saying, "Hey, this passed. You said you're going to do a second fire station. Where's the second fire station? Why isn't it staffed?" So
You're right.
I know you're thinking out loud here a little bit, Mr. Goldman, but when you said eliminate the word second, it would get a little bit more complicated than that, wouldn't it, to word it properly?
Well, and funding the operational costs for a fire station,
Oh, okay, just.
for fire station services, maybe, that
Okay.
way it's more general.
Okay. Good.
We can brainstorm this
Good question.
offline or now or whatnot and come, and just bring something back. As far as the language goes,
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you. I think that's probably a wise choice, and I don't think the chief would not want the extra personnel. At least we've got them. They're doing their training, and I don't know, maybe one of the Monroe Landing or something could let them work out of there if need be. But hopefully, both of them are going to pass at the same time. But just in case. But good point by Mr. Stuckey about fire station. So I think that's good. But we definitely need the extra personnel anyway. So.
Councilor Wiesner?
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this is the first time I've seen the language, right? So I'm trying to do it with, those goggles, right? Sitting down, getting ready to vote. And I basically got to disagree with some of my fellow council members. People do not read the voters pamphlet. They don't, right? I have several people in my family, and I have people that work for me, and I have people in the office, and, the voter pamphlet comes in, and it sits somewhere, in a prominent place with all good intentions, of grabbing it sometime, and sitting in front of the TV and reading and being an informed voter, and then it gets covered up by a magazine, and that's where it sits. I think the language that we have is direly important. Especially when we're looking for a majority, right? And so we've got to understand, majority. When we're talking about majority, to think that 75 or 80% of the people read the voters pamphlet, I'd have to differ with that. So when I look at this, the first thing that I see, going back to Councilmember Heisen's comments, is you are fourfolding, you are quadrupling my tax. That's what it says. You're quadrupling my property tax. You're going from 0.6656 to 2.4886 per thousand. You're quadrupling my property tax. People don't understand, what portion of their property tax is the city of Oak Harbor, which portion is the cemetery district, which portion is Island County, which portion is schools, right? When I look at this, and again, if we're going to be educating, the educated people are going to become educated, but you're always going to have that group of people that are going to vote based upon what they're reading. And they're going to sit down and they're going to take their ballot and they are going to read the proposition in front of them and they are going to cast their vote based upon this paragraph. That's what it says. Wow, my property taxes are going to quadruple. So, I think having an example, if we can honestly say that this will cost the average homeowner an additional $26 a month, I think that's a very powerful statement. It's a lot more powerful statement than quadrupling, my property tax. Now, where those words would come from, there's a little redundancy here. The concerning funding for fire protection response time improvements. We're telling not only in the title, fire protection response time improvements, but in the first sentence that this is for funding for fire response time improvements. I don't know that we need to say that this proposition would provide funding to improve emergency response times. We've already said that twice. Proposition certainly would provide funding by hire additional firefighters. Well, that's of course to address the title of the ballot and the first sentence of the ballot. So you can get a few words in there, but again, I just look at this and just a quick math in my head says you're quadrupling my property taxes if I check the yes box. And what does that mean to me?
So maybe I could suggest that should you all agree to move forward with this, which is what our motion is going to be later on, that we wordsmith this down a little smoother and not get hung up on the detail right now. That would be my suggestion. If everybody is in agreement with that.
Okay, Councilor Heisen?
Thank you. Just a couple of wording suggestions to replace second fire station with operating costs for expanded services, or something about operating costs or fire service for Oak Harbor's growing population. Something that illustrates the fact that we need to be expanding and serving a growing population without, adding entire sentences. So I just jotted down expanded services and alluding to a growing population for whatever it's worth. That's my contribution. Thanks.
Noted.
Councilor Hoffmeyer?
Yeah, I think Councillor Heisen's suggestions are good there. I don't want to see us get to where we're over limited, like was the case with the TBD. Just reading through this here, increasing the city's regular property tax by 66 cents per thousand to a maximum rate of 248. So whatever that works out to, that's a 30-something% increase, I think it is. But is there a way that you could run those numbers and tell us exactly what that is, David?
We could go back a slide or two to show that, but I think I'm getting the gist that I think we can wordsmith this to actually put the average impact either on an annual basis or monthly basis of this levy. I think we'd be able to fit a couple of those words in there. As far as the impact goes, where were we at there? So I think the next slide, there we go. So right now it's about $604 a year. This would increase it by $313, but that also includes the excess levy. If you're just looking at the levy lift itself, just go back one slide real quick. The total excess levy would be, the total lid lift is that number that's in the language. And if you take that and you put it over the current amount, which is 1.82, that's about a third. And you can see right here, 220 over 604, that's about a third increase. And then the rest of it, this excess levy portion would be another $100 or so, and that would bring it from a third to a half combined. So about a 50% increase over the current amount that folks pay to the city of Oak Harbor. But remember, the total bill that folks get on the average is about $3,500. Oak Harbor's portion $600. That's 17%. So if someone's thinking that my tax bill is $3,500, maybe 300 doesn't hit them as a massive impact in their head. If their total tax bill was only $600, then $300 would be a massive impact. But we can put that information out there, with the voter's guide and also with other kind of informational activities that we provide to show what the total tax bill looks like and what Oak Harbor's percentages actually are of that total tax bill.
Awesome, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Thank you, Mayor. Our city attorney, Ms. Evans, what in the description for the proposed ballot language must we keep in there? I know that sometimes they require, especially if you're going after money, there's certain RCWs or whatever. Is there anything in there that we're not aware of that we have to have in that statement for the ballot language?
It's awfully hard with 75 words to parse out what's not required. What might be useful for the next round of discussion is to maybe highlight or underline the things that are required for you so you can have a look at it that way.
Okay, I just know that if you got involved in working on this with our finance director, there are certain words that we're not aware of that have to be there, even though we want to slim this down and try to make it simpler to what's it going to cost me kind of thing. And I just want to be sure that we've got...
well, Mr. Goldman and I can certainly work on maybe coming up with proposed ballot language where all of the mandatory language is in red. And then you can tinker with wordsmithing the rest. And there's certainly always different ways to frame even the mandatory language.
Okay, well, I'm sure with your expertise, and you've heard all our druthers, that you will have some great ideas. So that would be wonderful. Thank you.
We'll give it a go.
So I'm a little curious on what, obviously, we're looking to council today to either move forward or not, number one. And then number two, it does sound like we could still have some discussion on the amount of staff, if there's a concern about that moving forward. It's obvious that we can wordsmith and then still come. We have time to do this, I guess, is my. We're not up against this thing this afternoon, but yet we would like a yes or no to go ahead. And then if council feels strong about something less than 9, we should have that conversation too, right?
Correct, Mayor. You
Okay,
got it. So,
anything else, obviously how it's worded and so forth are
Yeah, I
going to be
mean,
really important. And what gets put in the pamphlet, I have to agree at least partially with Mr. Wiesner, although I've got some neighbors who rely pretty heavily on the pamphlet. And so, some people do look at it. Yes. Councillor Heisen?
Thank you, Mayor. I definitely support moving forward. I'm really encouraged by the feedback, and I certainly think it's worth a try. And I really, if any of the people that did respond are watching, I want to extend my gratitude to everyone that took the time to leave such detailed feedback in the survey. I mean, there were some really well thought out responses in there, and a lot of really good suggestions. And so I can tell that people actually spent a lot of time thinking about it and providing that. So I want to thank everybody that did. It's hugely helpful. But yeah, I say let's go for it.
Thank you, Councillor Heisen. And yes, Councillor Wiesner.
yeah, I mean, obviously, this is a vote to the people, right? I mean, so this is what we're all about, right? We're putting together a package to hear what the people have to say. So, I think we have our work cut out for us a little bit. Proven by the number of responses we were able to get. I mean, the number of responses, obviously, it's either a good sign or a bad sign. It's either a good sign that people are just assuming that we're going to do the right thing moving forward, or it's a bad sign that the word hasn't got out yet. And, that's the challenge we've got. Fortunately, we've got some summer events coming ahead, and I know I have every confidence Chief Merrill is going to be out there with the team, and, the rest of staff and council, right? We're going to be supporting this and out in the community to do everything we can to educate the people. But that's a challenge we have in front of us, right? The education between now and November, so the folks know what it means cost-wise to them, what it means benefit-wise to them. But we've got our work cut out for us. But obviously, anytime we can put, a vote before the people to, get their direction on where they want to put their additional hard-earned money into creating a, better city to live in. That's something we obviously all should support, and I'll get 100% behind it and making sure that we get the education out there so that people know what it is they're committing to and what to expect from us in return.
Thank you, Councillor Wiesner. Councillor Hoffmeyer?
Yeah, for me, I've been out in the community a lot, and, this is something that we continue to talk about. Seeing the 82% support from the survey didn't surprise me at all. It feels more like 92% out in the community. I think very rarely in our time on council will we have the opportunity to get behind something that will be so widely supported by the public. I mean, also, very few votes that we ever take up here will potentially save lives. This is one of those things that in time certainly will. I fully support it. I've personally committed to Chief that I'm willing to knock on 1,000 doors, more if that's what's needed. And I think as long as council is behind this as a whole, I think the public already is. It won't be easy, but we will get it done. And I believe that they both can pass. And all the work that staff has done over these last several months to get to this point, and really, to hold the fort down for these last 14 years without having the second station. And whenever discussion is over, I certainly would be ready with a motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We were discussing up here, we do have, on the recommended action, we do actually have recommended action to move to authorize city staff to proceed. and it's fairly extensive, and that's what we're hoping
Correct.
to potentially get to at the end
Yeah, I
of
was going to
this.
get to that here in just a second. So
Yeah, okay.
on the levy lid lift, this is a 50% plus one in order to pass. The general obligation bond is a 60% supermajority with a 40% validation from the 2022 or 2021 general election. Just so we understand that there are three thresholds that we have to meet in order to pass both of these different ballot measures. And I think we're at the
And
right
also,
number.
Ray, looking at the last 10 years worth of special elections and just general ballot measures, it looks like even during an off year, we should have no problem, achieving the validation percentage.
Councilor Hoffmeyer?
I'm ready with the motion if there's no more discussion. Okay. I move to authorize city staff to proceed with creating a ballot measure for the November 8th, 2022 general election for a fire service levy to increase the level of service the City of Oak Harbor Fire Department provides to its residents, including but not limited to building a second fire station in the southwest area of the city, increasing minimum staffing per day, replacing two 24-year-old pumper engines with a new Quint and a ladder truck, and the purchase of necessary protective gear and tools for staffing.
So we've got a
Second.
motion? And a second from Councilor Heisen. Okay, so we have a motion and a second. And the motion reads, I think, pretty much exactly like the recommended action. I noticed in the next to the last sentence, Mr. Hoffmeyer said with a new Quint, and our motion recommended action says a new pumper engine. So I assume that that's the same thing.
The engine is one item and the Quint is a second item.
Okay? Okay, so I think, did you mean to?
It looks like the language from the packet might vary by a word or two.
Oh, okay, okay.
So the intent is to replace our two oldest fire engines, replace it with one new engine and ladder trucks / or open parentheses, Quint, close parentheses. So two independent apparatus.
Okay.
Ladder truck and Quint. Or, I'm
So-
sorry, engine and Quint.
So Mr. Hoffmeyer is correct. The recommended action that's in our packet is slightly different than the way this reads. Okay. But there's no confusion then at this point amongst council. Okay? So we've got a motion and a second. Any other input? Questions? Yes, Councilor Stuckey.
Two scenario questions. The station's $2 million. I'm going extreme here to prove a point. $2 million over what we budgeted. What do we do? Where's that money coming from? We're obligated then to build the station, are we not?
Yes. And then we would go back and look at design features and where we can reduce station size or
Sure.
equipment-wise, and how we can reduce that funding down to the amount that we've allocated.
Okay. Well, well, that's my question, though, would we just cover it, in which case, there's another something going over budget, or would we look to reducing the size and the scope of it to make it be what we said would be? And the second question is, one passes, but the other doesn't. So we have the staff, and I understand having staff is great, but the station, is there any possible thought, if that were to happen, which is unlikely, of maybe working with North would be to expand a station on Heller or something, or at least use their station they currently have? Is there any way we could get a presence down there without a station if that weird scenario does happen?
I will tell you with North Whidbey, there is no room in any of their houses to put
Okay,
any
there's
of
no
our
room.
apparatus.
Okay, that was my question, so thank you.
Okay, good questions. Anyone else? Questions, input? Ready to vote? Okay, all those in favor of the recommended action signify by raising your right hand. Okay, and that passes unanimously, so that I won't call for nay votes. And I've got to say at this time, Chief, that since I got this job, you and I have had lots of conversations about your concern about the growth in the southwest quadrant, and rightfully so. It's coming. It's still coming. We both know that. And hopefully that we can convince our citizens that we need to be there with a better presence, and that's where we're headed with this to go and get them to vote. So
Absolutely.
thank you, Chief, for your patience. You've been very patient. We've changed your budget, I know, for a number of years. And so it's actually exciting at this point to look at opportunity to get there, like you've been
It
wanting
is.
to do for 6.5 years.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, Council, I sincerely thank you. Our fire department sincerely thanks you.
Okay. I think with
All
that-
right, Mayor Bob, I have just one point of information. I just looked it up. The filing deadline for the general is August 2nd, 2022. So we'll bring you back that ballot language, hopefully later this month, for your perusal. But I think we also have to bring you an official resolution or ordinance to get it on the ballot. So I'll talk with Hillary on that. We'll coordinate it and make sure we bring back the things that are needed.
Thank you, Mr. Goldman. And no other questions or business at this time. We have no other items on our agenda, so I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you for your time and all of your work, council. And thank you, public.